Morning light softly illuminated the stack of mail piled on Andy's desk. Golden rays filtered through the half-open blinds, casting striped shadows. It was a quiet morning, just like any other. But among the envelopes, there was one that stood out. Bellamy Gardens, the name of the city's most luxurious wedding venue shown in gold lettering. Embossed expensive, impossible to ignore. A small unease stirred in her chest. Slowly, she opened the envelope and pulled out the contract inside. The quality paper had elegant typography. And there it was, her name, Andrea Collins. But the handwriting wasn't hers. This can't be real. Her voice trembled. The loops were different. The pen pressure was wrong. But she recognized that rounded script with sickening clarity. Her sister, Destiny. That distinctive style was alive in this forged signature. $76,000? The moment she saw the total, her fingers went numb. The coffee cup slipped and fell to the floor. Shattered ceramic bounced, black liquid staining the white tiles in violent splashes. She felt no heat, no pain. The world was simply losing its sound. Something quietly collapsed deep in her chest. What she thought was family love had just turned into betrayal on a single sheet of paper. Cold sweat gathered in her palms. Her fingertips trembled slightly as she gripped her smartphone. Steadying her breath, Andy told herself, "Let's end this." What if your family exploited your trust? Could you forgive them just because they're family? If this resonates with you, please like and subscribe. My name is Andrea Collins. My friends call me Andy. I'm 32 and work at an interior design company in town. I create spaces where people feel safe, where they can breathe. Ironic, considering I'd forgotten how to do that for myself. I'm meticulous. I hate breaking promises. I'm the person who shows up early, who remembers birthdays, who never complains. My family always called me the responsible one. They said it with pride, with affection. But I never heard the unspoken part, the part that meant the one we can use. It took me a long time to understand the weight and sacrifice hidden behind those words. Too long. Morning light was soft, gently coloring the white walls of Andy's room. Steam rose slowly from the coffee in her cup. Mail was piled high on her desk. She was sorting through it mechanically, as usual. But one envelope caught her eye. Thick, glossy paper with gold lettering. Bellamy Gardens, the name of the city's most prestigious wedding venue. Why? The small whisper surprised even her with its tremor. She had no idea why this would come to her. No wedding plans. No friend's invitation. No way. She gasped, tearing it open. Inside was a neatly folded contract, fine cream-colored paper with elegant text. And at the bottom, a familiar name. Andrea Collins. Her signature. But she hadn't written it. The handwriting was wrong. The loops were too round. The angle was sharper than usual. But she knew these quirks. Her sister, Destiny. The way she wrote. That distinctive style where letters ended with a little bounce. She didn't want to believe it. But there it was. $76,000. Carved into reality. Warning bells rang in her head. The cup slipped from her hand. The sound of it shattering against the hard floor echoed through the quiet room. Coffee splattered, wetting her feet. But she didn't even feel the heat. This wasn't a dream. "Destiny, is this you?" A voiceless sound escaped her lips. The next moment, her hand moved on its own. She stared at the phone number printed at the top of the contract. She picked up her smartphone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. After 2 rings, a calm female voice answered. "Bellamy Gardens, how may I help you?" The sound of reality. Andy's heartbeat quickened. The fake contract that had only existed in her nightmares was now connecting to the real world. Sweat slowly soaked into her palm as she gripped the phone. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it. She tried to steady her breathing, but her throat tightened. The scent of coffee still lingered in the room, mixing with the sharp tang of panic. Yet the air suddenly felt cold, thin. The bright voice on the other end felt ironically, cruelly real. "This is Andy Collins. I'm calling about Destiny Collins' wedding." Her own voice sounded strangely foreign, flat, mechanical. "Oh, you're the sister." The woman on the phone sounded genuinely delighted. "Everyone is so moved by your generosity. They say there's no sister as wonderful as you. Moved by your generosity." Those words pierced her. It felt as if someone had been writing a story about a kind sister in a place she knew nothing about, creating a fiction where she was the hero, when really, she was just the victim. Her cheeks flushed with heat. Her heart began to race, pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Shame, anger, and sadness, all swirling together in her chest. Gift. That single word crumbled inside her chest. This wasn't a gift. It was stolen trust, taken without permission. I see. Thank you. Her lips moved on their own, and she hung up unconsciously. The silence returned to the room. Outside the window, the city's noise echoed distantly, yet the world felt far away. Andy sank into her chair and began recalling memories one by one. They came flooding back, uninvited, relentless. Summer, age 16. She worked double shifts at an ice cream shop, soaked in sweat. Her feet ached in cheap sneakers that she couldn't afford to replace. The air conditioning never worked properly. She'd come home at midnight, smelling of vanilla and exhaustion, counting tips that barely covered bus fare. Andy had always believed that being relied upon was proof of being loved. That's what good daughters did, right? They sacrificed. They smiled. They never said no. In high school, she worked late into the night to help with the family finances. While her friends went to parties and football games, she was restocking freezers and wiping down counters. In college, she sent money home even while paying off student loans. Every month, without fail. Even when it meant eating ramen for weeks. Even when it meant skipping textbooks and borrowing from classmates. When her mother said, "You're so responsible," it wasn't praise. It was an unspoken order, a manipulation dressed up as a compliment. Each time, Andy gave up something she wanted: travel, clothes, time with a partner, weekend trips she never took, dresses she never bought, dates she had to cancel. In the name of family, her youth was quietly carved away, piece by piece. That paycheck went to Destiny's trip. "I'm going to Cancun with friends," she'd said, showing off her new bikini. Andy had smiled and said, "Have fun." She always said yes. The check from her grandmother for college graduation, $2,000. Andy had plans for it. A new laptop for design work, maybe a weekend in the mountains. Her mother said, "Just lend me a little." And it never came back. Gone. Vanished into the black hole of family need. Her father's small investment opportunity was never recovered either. $5,000. He'd promised to repay in 3 months. That was 7 years ago. Still, Andy endured. Every time she was called the responsible daughter, she tried to turn her sacrifice into pride. But she'd reached her limit. She remembered a Sunday dinner 2 months ago. The smell of her mother's roast chicken filling the house. Destiny showed off her engagement ring, laughing, her happiness filling every corner of the room. The diamond caught the light, throwing rainbows across the ceiling. "We're having our ceremony at Bellamy Gardens." She said it like it was a done deal, like it was her birthright. Her father poured wine, the bottle expensive, something Andy had never tasted. He said, "Andy, you should help out. You just got promoted. Support your sister a little." His tone was casual, like he was asking her to pass the salt. Her mother added in a gentle voice, the one she used when she wanted something. "Family helps each other." Those 4 words, spoken so softly, carried the weight of 1,000 obligations. On the table were roast chicken, wine, and silence. Candles flickered. Silverware gleamed. Everyone at the table was smiling. But beneath the laughter, expectations and pressure were suffocatingly heavy. The unspoken demands hung in the air like smoke. No one asked if Andy wanted to help. They simply assumed she would, because she always did. Andy gripped her napkin, her nails leaving white marks on her palm. The fabric twisted in her fist. The sound of her father pouring wine echoed eerily quiet in her ears. The glug-glug of liquid filling glass sounded like a countdown. Family helps each other. Those words rang like chains at the center of the table, leaving no escape. They wrapped around her throat, her wrists, her ankles. Invisible, but unbreakable. Destiny smiled, pursing her lips. "Please, sis. I've always dreamed of this dress." Andy finally understood her position. She was the family ATM. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "You're such a responsible child. Now those words sounded like a curse. She looked at the contract again. On that paper was proof of betrayal. $76,000. That amount symbolized everything she'd carried in the past. Even as her hands trembled, Andy took a deep breath. "Let's end this." The whispered words were the quietest and strongest she'd ever spoken. As she picked up the shards of the broken coffee cup, Andy didn't throw them away. She placed them in the corner of her desk. Looking at her distorted reflection in the fragments, she smiled faintly. "Let's end this." The words echoed quietly in the room like a spell. In the empty space, only her voice remained as proof of reality. It wasn't fear. It was the first hint of freedom. That night, she couldn't sleep. Even with the lights off, the words on the contract burned behind her eyelids. Family helps each other. The foolishness of believing those words weighed heavily on her chest. But now she knew. Mutual support and exploitation were completely different things. The night was silent, oppressively so. When the clock struck 3 in the morning, only the glow of her laptop lit Andy's room. She couldn't sleep. In the corner of the kitchen where the scent of coffee still lingered, her fingers trembled as she typed. She entered just one word into the search bar. Wedding. She pressed enter. Hundreds of emails appeared, cascading down like an avalanche. One subject line jumped out at her. Andy's burden. The moment she clicked it, her heart jumped. The sender was her mother. The recipients, her father and sister Destiny. She'll cave eventually. She always does. Remember last year? She said Destiny should pay for her own car. But a week later, she sent a check. The words on the screen blurred. Not from tears. It was the distortion of anger and despair mixed together. They'd been discussing her, strategizing. Next came Destiny's reply. If she refuses, I'll figure something out. I can run credit under her name. Under her name. The cruelty of those words cut deeper than any insult. The family had treated her not as a person, but as a credit score. Her identity was just another asset they could steal. Andy took a deep breath, the air shaking in her lungs. She opened a new file on her laptop, her hands steadier now. She typed the title with deliberate precision. Family loans. A record of money lent to family. She opened her bank statements, years of them. She typed in the payment history, line by line. 2008, Cancun trip, $850. She'd been 18, working at that ice cream shop. 2010, grandmother's graduation gift. All went to mother's medical bills. 2014, father's short-term investment. Never recovered. Each memory brought a sharp pain in her chest. With each entry, memories returned. Someone's laughter, her mother's sighs, Destiny's sweet voice saying please. They replayed on a loop in her mind. But as she filled each cell, calm gradually returned. Numbers protected her heart, created distance between emotion and fact. This spreadsheet wasn't just a record. It was a blueprint for the years stolen by family and the life she would reclaim. Every cell was an act of resistance. As time passed, calmness returned. Converting things to numbers helped her distance herself from the emotions. In the bottom right corner of the screen, a total appeared. $42,387. She stared quietly at that number. The total cost of family love was heavier and uglier than she'd imagined. And now, a $76,000 forged contract was being added to it. Family helps each other. Those words now sounded like mockery. Rain began falling outside the window. Streetlight reflections shimmered faintly on the wet asphalt. Andy sat hunched in her chair, lit only by the computer screen. Her fingertips were cold, her heartbeat the only sound echoing loudly in the room. Years of endurance were collapsing tonight with an audible crash. She was finally confronted with the reality, in numbers, that she'd been a convenient wallet for her family. Still, no tears came. Between anger and sadness, her heart felt blank. As dawn approached, Andy leaned back in her chair. Morning light slipped through the curtains, illuminating the words on the screen. Her heart still ached, but that pain wasn't fear. It was the pain of standing up. When dawn fully broke, an email notification chimed. The subject line: Interior Design Position Application. The sender: Charleston Branch Hiring Manager. We are interested in your portfolio. We'd like to speak with you. Andy's fingers froze. Charleston, 3 states away. It was far, but for the first time, she thought, it's okay to run away. The words Charleston Branch on the screen felt like light at the end of a long tunnel. She didn't know what the workplace would be like, but just the fact that it was far away became hope. A place where no one would exploit her name. A world where no one would guilt her with. Because we're family. It was just a job notification. But to Andy, it felt like a letter of salvation. She quietly picked up the contract and traced the forged signature with her finger. Andrea Collins. Looking at the name written by someone else, she whispered, "This is no longer my name." She straightened her back and closed the laptop. The early morning air brushed her skin. In the cold, a hint of hope was mixed in. Not an ending, but a beginning. The first step in reclaiming the years stolen by family. From that day on, Andy immersed herself in work during the day and organized evidence at night. Bank transactions, message history, call records, all became weapons for quiet retaliation. Her anger had transformed into a plan. On the weekend, her mother called. "Andy, Destiny wants to add flowers at the venue. It's only $1,000. I won't pay for it." Her reply was surprisingly calm, even to herself. Silence. Then her mother's sigh. "What happened to the kind Andy I knew? You've become cold since becoming a career woman." Andy looked at the phone and said quietly, "Kindness and sacrifice aren't the same thing." When the call ended, heavy silence fell over the room. Her face reflected on the smartphone screen looked like a stranger. Her mother's words had always been absolute. Family helps each other. Mother knows best. She'd never doubted that believing those words was proof of love. But now, for the first time, she could say no. It was a small victory. Deep in her chest, something was slowly peeling away. That evening, she checked her credit report. A new account under Bellamy Gardens. Her credit information had been used. "I won't let others control this anymore." Determination welled up from deep within. The next morning, her colleague Eleanor said, "Did you apply for the Charleston position? They really want you." Andy smiled and nodded. "Yes, I'm thinking about it." Behind those words was a will, not to run away, but to live again, to end a life bound by family. There was only one thing to do: reclaim her own name, and everything was about to begin. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves. Andy sat in the office conference room, her smartphone face down on the table. Every notification made her heart skip. She decided to ignore messages from her mother and sister for just one more day. Right now, she needed to focus on the screen in front of her. On the other side of the screen was Gregory Winters, creative director at Charleston Home and Design. The distinguished man with graying hair studied Andy's portfolio intently. "Your spatial design has a quiet balance." "Thank you. I want to create rooms where people can breathe." The words came naturally. For the past year, she'd sacrificed herself for family. Now, finally, she was speaking for herself. Gregory smiled. "Wonderful philosophy. By the way, what's your desired salary?" Before, such a question would have made her shrink. But this Andy was different. "Considering my experience and market rates, I'm seeking $82,000 annually." There was a brief pause, but the director nodded. "That's exactly what we had in mind." At that moment, something loosened inside her. When the interview ended, she noticed her hands had stopped trembling. She felt not fear, but possibility. After leaving the office, she stopped in the building's shadow and looked up at the sky. Autumn wind brushed her cheek, as if saying, "You're free now." That night when she got home, her mother had called 10 times. "Andy, Destiny wants to change the tablecloths for the reception, just making it a bit fancier." Her voicemail echoed. In the next message, her sister was laughing. "Sis, the flower estimate went up. But that's okay, right?" Andy left the phone face down on the table. Instead, she opened her computer and organized folders. Family loan records, wedding contract, Charleston branch offer. 3 files symbolizing the turning point of her life. One was past sacrifice, one was stolen trust, and one was the future she'd finally grasped. Those files glowed quietly in the silence. The following week at noon, she opened an email from Gregory in her car. Subject: job offer. As she read, her eyes grew hot. "We look forward to welcoming you to the team." With just that one sentence, A long-closed future felt open, but the peace didn't last long. That night, a message arrived from her mother. "Andy, come to brunch on Sunday. I need to talk to you about something." She couldn't refuse. Realizing this, she understood that family chains still bound her. The next morning, I visited a local law office. Sitting in the waiting room, I clutched a folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of the forged contract, email screenshots, and bank statements. I was shown to a meeting room, where Attorney Harper listened quietly. "This signature isn't yours?" "No. The handwriting is different. The amount was charged without my consent." He examined each document and eventually nodded. "This clearly constitutes fraud. Let's file a police report and simultaneously request payment suspension." I listened, holding my breath. Filing a complaint about family, it's just. Blood relations don't matter. Someone forged your signature and moved money. That's the fact. Harper's voice was gentle but unwavering. "If you leave this unaddressed, similar harm will continue." I nodded quietly. In that moment, the fear buried deep in my chest transformed slightly into determination. A few days passed. During sleepless nights, Andy replayed her conversation with a lawyer repeatedly. Fear remained, but she felt she had to move forward. Sunday morning, the moment she opened the door to her parents' house, lively voices hit her ears. Relatives and friends filled the living room. At the center of the smiles stood Destiny. In her hands, a giant bouquet with crystal decorations. "Sis, look, these are the centerpieces. We're putting 12 per table. We are inviting 300 people." Her mother added with a beaming smile. Andy froze. 300? I wasn't told about such a scale. Her mother shrugged. "You said you wanted the best ceremony, didn't you?" "I didn't say that." The voice was small, but a clear refusal. Her father laughed by the fireplace, raising his voice. "Our daughter is generous. She's setting up the perfect stage for her sister." The room erupted in applause. Andy felt suffocated and escaped to the garden. Sitting on a garden bench, she took deep breaths. Inside, laughter spilled out. Among them, she alone felt like a foreign object. "Is this family bonding?" she whispered. That evening, returning to her car, her smartphone vibrated. An additional email from Gregory. "The office is ready. Please start next month." A new life was certainly waiting for her. But at the same time, another message had arrived from her mother. "Make the venue payment tomorrow for the flowers and lighting." Andy stared at the message, unable to move in her car. It's not over yet. That night, she stayed awake until dawn. On her desk, evidence documents were piled high. Credit reports, email history, call recordings. She couldn't stay silent any longer. The following week, she visited her mother's house again. In the kitchen, her mother was making coffee with a smile, humming softly, as if nothing was wrong. "Hey Andy, the cake tasting this weekend will be fun." Destiny stood beside her, scrolling through her phone. "Sis, you haven't approved the additional lighting yet." Andy took a deep breath and sat down at the kitchen table. The chair scraped against the floor. "Show me all the contracts." Her voice was steady. "Cold, huh?" "Everything. Venue, flowers, cake, dress. Everything that uses my name." The atmosphere changed instantly. Her mother looked away, suddenly fascinated by the coffee maker. Destiny's smile froze. "What do you mean? Don't you trust me?" Andy leaned forward, eyes locked on her sister's. "Trust? Someone who forged my signature?" Silence. Her mother forced a laugh, high and brittle. "You're being dramatic. It's just a clerical error." But something had broken in Andy. "This is a crime." She said it quietly, which made it more powerful. Destiny raised her voice. "We're family. Why are you talking like this? Family wouldn't do this." Tears ran down her cheeks, not weakness, but proof of anger. That evening, Andy called her friend James. They signed a $76,000 contract with my signature. James' voice was quiet. "You've reached your limit, Andy. You have to protect yourself. I might have to run away." "You're not running away. You're taking back what's yours." After hanging up, Andy wiped her tears and opened her laptop. She created a new folder. The name, Reclaim. Inside, she stored all the evidence and hope, and she decided. Next week, she'd move to Charleston, from her family's story to her own story. Outside the window, dawnlight began illuminating the city. Andy quietly opened the curtains. She wouldn't run anymore. This time, she'd stand up for herself. The day after booking her flight to Charleston, Andy stood in front of the police station. White exterior walls shone brightly in the morning sun. In her hands, a thick envelope. Inside, copies of the contract, printed emails, bank statements, and evidence of the forged signature. Something trembled deep in her chest. She was scared, but there was no turning back. A woman at the reception spoke gently. "How may I help you?" Annie took a small breath and answered with a trembling voice. "I need to report an unauthorized contract signed under my name by family members." An officer led her to a consultation room. Under a gray desk and cold fluorescent lights, she laid out the documents one by one. "This is evidence that someone forged my signature and signed a wedding contract." A young officer examined the documents with a serious expression. "By family members?" "My mother and sister." The moment she spoke those words, her throat burned, but no more tears came. "These documents are valid. I'll immediately transfer this to the appropriate department." The officer's voice echoed quietly. With those words, the taut string inside her finally snapped. For so long, she'd stayed silent because of the word family. Now, finally, she had a voice. Walking out of the police station, autumn wind brushed her cheek coldly. The sky was high, as if showing her a new world. Andy stopped and looked up at the blue sky. "This is right. I'm not going back." That evening, a message arrived from her mother. "What are you thinking? Turning your family into the police?" The words were short but cold and sharp. Minutes later, Destiny called. "Sis, why?" This could end up in the news. Andy didn't answer. She had no words left to give. After hanging up, her chest stung. But beneath that pain, she felt the texture of freedom. That night, an email arrived from the lawyer. "The police have officially started the investigation. We are proceeding with freezing the contract." Reading those words, Andy finally exhaled. In this moment, past and future were divided. A few days later, she finished transitioning her work and began preparing to move to Charleston. While packing boxes, she picked up an old photo album. Pictures from childhood. Herself smiling, shoulder to shoulder with her sister. That smile was pure, knowing no doubt. "Goodbye to who I was." The night before departure, she placed her house keys on the table. "This house no longer means home to me." In her bag, the Charleston branch contract, the police receipt, and one memo. "Don't be afraid to take back your own life." It was the last letter Andy wrote to herself. From the airplane window, the city lights slowly receded. Her heart felt lighter. In a new land, she would live not for others, but for herself. No one would exploit her name anymore. The night she arrived in Charleston, something felt different. The air itself seemed lighter, easier to breathe. From her hotel window, lights from the harbor gently swayed on dark water. She could see boats bobbing, their masts creating a forest of slim silhouettes. Sea breeze blew in through the crack in the window, rustling the curtains like whispered encouragement. It smelled of salt and possibility. The room's air gradually filled with a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Annie opened her notebook, the pages crisp and blank, full of potential. She picked up a pen, feeling its weight in her hand. Something so simple, so powerful. The ability to write her own story, finally. She wrote slowly, deliberately. First night, scared, but alive. The words looked small on the page, but they were hers. Completely, undeniably hers. A few weeks later, she was busy at her new workplace. The office smelled of fresh paint and new possibilities. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Colleagues welcomed her warmly, without expectations, without hidden agendas, just genuine kindness. Gregory smiled gently when he saw her designs, his approval free of obligation. "The air in Charleston has the scent of renewal, doesn't it?" He said it like a man who'd been reborn himself once. "Yes, it really does." Andy smiled, a smile different from before. Not the pleasing smile she'd worn like armor. Not one seeking protection or avoiding conflict. This was real. A smile for standing up. A smile that came from somewhere deep and true inside her. During lunch break, sitting by a cafe window, she opened her smartphone. Subject: Contract nullification notice. The final report from the police. The contract with Bellamy Gardens was officially void. All payments canceled. Andy slowly closed the screen. It's over. Outside the cafe, sunset lit the harbor in gold. Sea breeze blew in, rustling the edge of a paper napkin. She took a deep breath and opened a new page in her planner. Next, I'll create a space for no one but myself. Writing that sentence, the weight in her chest finally disappeared. That night, walking along the harbor, Andy told herself, I'll never stay silent again. Waves quietly lapped at the shore, sounding almost like applause. She smiled. A new life had truly begun. Charleston morning. Outside the window, sea breeze rustled the trees and seabirds called in the distance. Andy slowly opened the curtains. Pale light flowed into the room, illuminating the blueprints on the table. There, a new client's living room plan was drawn. Let's start from here, she whispered to herself and took a deep breath. The harbor town air was humid with a faint scent of salt. Red brick buildings were dyed in sunset, and distant bells rang slowly. That sound felt like the rhythm of her new life. She was gradually adjusting to life at Charleston Home and Design. Wide windows, white walls, green plants. Mornings filled with a scent of coffee and gentle laughter from employees. Andy, yesterday's blueprint was lovely. Colleague Marie called out. Thank you. It still needs revisions, but I think it's heading in the right direction. Exchanging words, she noticed her voice naturally bouncing. Here, no one exploited her. In this place, she could finally reclaim her own name. Before lunch, Marie peeked from across the desk. Hey Andy, want to go to the art museum this weekend? There's a small exhibit by the sea. Marie's voice was bright, pleasantly resonating even amid the office bustle. Andy put down her pen, thought for a moment, then smiled. I'd love to. It'd be nice to walk by the ocean again. Yay. I'll pick you up Saturday morning. Marie laughed happily and left. On the desk, Andy's finger slowly stopped at the corner of the blueprint. Being invited by someone, being able to genuinely look forward to it. She'd forgotten such feelings for years. Deep inside, she felt a small warm light ignite. That afternoon during break, she headed to a seaside cafe. Sitting by the window, the sea swayed gently. She picked up her smartphone and opened her inbox. The final police notification email was marked as read. Andy stared at the screen and slowly closed it. She didn't need to read it anymore. That matter was already over. Not an end, but rebirth. That word floated in her heart. The coffee in her cup cooled. That quietness felt strangely comforting. At dusk, walking along the harbor, sea breeze brushed her hair, orange light spreading across the water. A child flew a kite in the distance. Watching it dance in the wind, Andy smiled. The word freedom finally felt real. She no longer wanted to blame her family. Hatred was slowly transforming into something else. Not cutting off the past, but quietly accepting it. That night, returning to her apartment, she opened her notebook. Today, I moved forward a little. She wrote that line and set down her pen. Outside, harbor lights flickered, and the sound of waves echoed faintly. On the edge of her desk, a single sheet of paper, the Charleston branch employment contract. She placed her hand on it and closed her eyes. This is proof of my life that no one can take away. That thought quietly spread in her chest. Over the weekend, Andy visited the art museum with Marie. The drive along the coast had been beautiful, windows down, hair whipping in the wind. The seaside gallery was small, but perfectly curated. Local artists' works lined white walls that glowed in natural light. The space smelled of wood and sea air drifting through open windows. In that quiet sanctuary, she stopped in front of one painting. Her breath caught. A small boat on wild waves. The ocean was turbulent, painted in shades of deep blue and angry gray. A woman stood on the boat, impossibly balanced, facing the wind with her hair streaming behind her, head raised defiantly, arms spread wide. Not in surrender, but in embrace, gazing somewhere far away, toward a horizon only she could see. That figure felt like herself, or maybe, like who she was becoming. Strong, unafraid, free. I bet this painting was made for someone like you. Marie laughed, her voice soft with understanding. She'd heard some of Andy's story over coffee one morning. Not all of it, but enough. Andy nodded, her eyes still on the woman in the boat. Maybe so. She felt tears prick her eyes. But they were good tears. The kind that came from recognition, not pain. From hope, not grief. On the way back, twilight illuminated the river in shades of pink and gold. A quiet street away from the city's bustle, lined with oak trees. Walking slowly, she suddenly took out her smartphone. She opened the old family chat, something she hadn't looked at in weeks. Unread messages lined up, dozens of them. She scrolled past them until she found one that was different. "Can we meet next time you're free?" A short message from Destiny, sent 3 days ago. Just a question. Andy stared at the screen for a long moment. Finally, she started typing. "I need distance for now, but I hope we can talk someday." She read it 3 times before pressing send, leaving a door open, even if just a crack. Not for them, for herself. When she pressed send, her chest lightened slightly. The weight didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted, became something she could carry without it crushing her. Returning to her room, the sound of the night sea drifted through the window, waves lapping at the shore in an ancient rhythm. That sound no longer felt lonely or threatening. It sounded like accompaniment to the future, a steady beat she could walk to. Andy took a deep breath, feeling her lungs expand fully. She lay down on the bed, her body finally relaxing. She thought about tomorrow's schedule, new designs waiting to be drawn, a meeting with a client who valued her ideas, a weekend morning walk along the Battery, watching sailboats. All of them, days not for others, but for herself. Days she'd earned, days she'd fought for, days that belonged to no one but Andrea Collins. Lights outside the window twinkled quietly in the darkness. Harbor lights, street lamps, windows in distant apartments. Each one a life being lived, a story being written. Finally, "I'm living as myself." The words felt like a prayer, a promise, a celebration. Those words dissolved into the night with the gentle sound of waves, becoming part of the air she breathed. The next morning, Andy picked up a new blueprint from her desk. Her coffee steamed beside it, filling the room with warmth. There, a completely blank white sheet with nothing drawn yet, an empty canvas. A fresh start, infinite possibility contained in pristine whiteness. "I'll draw from here." She smiled softly, genuinely, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and made her whole face glow. She picked up her pen with steady fingers. No trembling, no fear, no hesitation. She moved her pen across the paper in a confident stroke. It was the first line shaping her own future, a future she would design, measure by measure, room by room, a life with space to breathe. And for the first time in 32 years, Andrea Collins was free. If you're struggling under someone's expectations, remember, walking away isn't running away. It's choosing yourself. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Let's support each other.